Gen Z adults don't think they'll retire. This week on the Extreme Personal Finance Show. Hey everyone, hey, how you doing? My name is Chris. Welcome to episode 29 of the Extreme Personal Finance Show. Joining me, my co-host Dan. Dan, how you doing, man?
Hello. Doing good. Doing good.
All right. Good to talk to you again. I know it's been a little bit. I come down with a cold, and then I was on vacation that led up to the cold. um,
Traveling will do it, man. I tell you, just if you're wanting to be sick, just go travel somewhere and you'll catch something. I
yeah,
swear.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I was rubbing elbows with 140,000 other music fans at a festival where you're going to catch something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
Had
I
a
was
good
up.
time though, yeah.
Yeah, I was at in Sacramento, California. This is my first ever aftershock festival, which is like it's got to be it's got to be one of the biggest. I've talked to so many other fans that were there that they go every year. Like a lot of them were
Well,
locals, but people came from all over. I hung out with a couple that came all the way from London just for this festival.
no kidding.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh yeah, it took us, 22 hours between all of the connections and stuff." And I was like, "Wow." And he's like, "Yeah, and then we got to catch a flight back and we're back to work on Wednesday." I was like, "Wow." That's some hardcore
That's
fandom
a
right there.
some good commitment there. So
Yeah, but it was I heard some feedback from many of the fans. This was the first time they added a fifth stage. So there's 130 bands across five different stages. And
wow.
so there were times when you had to choose, like there was overlap. So
Yeah.
like for instance, like you would be watching, like I know I was talking with someone, we were watching one band and you could hear the other band at one of the other stages and they're like, "Oh, well, man, I really wanted to see them too," right? So you kind of have to make those decisions. And but it was I'm really happy I went. I got to be honest, I'm over 50, and 8, 10, 12 hour days in the sun, but 4 days in a row, it's a lot, buddy. I don't know. I can do maybe 2 day festival, but 4 days, I don't know, man.
Yeah, that sounds rough. I'm not quite in my 50s yet, but I don't want to do that. Good on you. I'm glad you had a good time though.
Right on, man. And then I will say the interesting, it was there was the difference in like general admission. So like people that would get GA, general admission, and then they had some like premium or like VIP tickets that gave you some shade where you could like be kind of shaded from like some trees, some groves. They had like some more comfortable chairs that you could kind of rest and relax. Um, but the interesting thing, you're still like there was like still tons of like food truck food and stuff. And I blame California. Guess how much guess how much a pizza was at this food
Well,
truck?
so we've got two things working against us here. We're in California and you're at a festival.
That's right.
$18.
$40.
Oh my God. I thought I was aiming high.
So burgers were 26 bucks. It cost me an extra $13 for fries. I mean, I was dropping probably $100 a day for food. It was absolutely insane, buddy.
That's a grocery budget.
Yeah, it was. I like the
Oh,
first, like after the first like 2 days, I was like, I just have to come to terms that this is what it's going to be.
just eat a big breakfast. Just
Right? It was crazy, man. Anyway,
wow.
okay, back to the show. So, hey, man, it's something that is kind of close to my heart because I know I've
Mhm.
talked in the past how um last October, so 2023, went on vacation with my kids, and that was the vacation. It was October of 2023, and on the plane with my kids is when I told them I was going to retire. So I told my kids, "Hey, I've been working on this plan for the last, you know, 8, 9 years, and I'm going to be leaving my day job at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year, right?" And my daughter, who was 20, yeah, she was 22 at the time. She said, "Well, Dad, don't you know that my generation will never retire?" And it made me super sad, Dan.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing is, I'm right there with you because I I would bet you, no offense to your daughter,
Yeah.
but I would bet you that she believes that because she was told that, not because she sat down by herself or with somebody else or whatnot and made a plan and a strategy with some goals and saw that it wasn't going to work. Right? Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. I think it has very much to do with the media that is being consumed,
Yeah.
right?
It's just
So
like,
she's watching TikTok or getting messages on Snapchat or whatever it is, right?
right. So somebody else told her, like, you're not going to ever retire. So this is just what it is. It's like, oh, okay.
Yep,
That's the truth. It's like,
exactly.
well,
I mean, one of the things I'm sure that, her and my son who's 24, they hear that, well, Social Security just isn't going to be around by the time they get old enough. That's one thing they hear.
mm-hmm.
But then there's all this other stuff too about just, you know, rising costs of everything, inflation. Um, I absolutely understand that times are different, right? Like when I was 24 and could buy a house for under 60 grand, that those times are gone. I get that.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
but
But
yeah,
until 2020 rolled around, 2021, you know, I can't say that we could ever expect them to get that low again, but did anyone ever think that we would have 2.5 to 3% mortgage rates?
right.
No.
Yeah.
So sure, you could have bought, a house for 60 grand back whenever, but it was at 7, 8, 9%. And long story short, yes, I understand that interest rates went up and housing prices went up. So right now we're in this weird time, but it's just like anything else where it ebbs and flows. And, 10, 15 years from now, it's going to be different than it is right now. Right. And I
Mhm.
was just reading some different articles and looking at some different things of inflations and way things have gone and whatnot. And it's interesting that if you find some articles from 2022 versus some articles from 2024, they're vastly different just because 2022 is when we had that peak of 9% inflation. And that's where everyone's headspace was, as of
Sure.
like, oh, and next year's going to be 8%. And the year after that, it's probably still going to be 7 or 8%. Except, no, it came down faster than that to this, 2.5, 3% target. And so now it's just like, oh, well, prices aren't as bad as where they were forecast to be. And it's because it's always a moving target, but everyone wants to assume that they know the future.
Right, right. Do you feel as though Gen Z adults today, do you think they're less likely to save for retirement due to like the financial struggles that they're experiencing or they're hearing? Or do you think they have just a different view of what retirement's going to be?
uh, the people that I've talked to, I think it's more the latter, which I'm actually okay with. um, there's kind of my generation. Well, we're close enough in age, kind of like our generation, the one right before us, the old Xers and the young boomers, if you
Hmm.
will. Um, and this was actually one of the things that I was reading through in prep for this is retirement's really it's a fairly new concept. As far as like in the lifespan of humanity, right?
Hmm.
It's what was it? Late 1800s. Von Bismarck, this chancellor in Germany, basically. Uh, Long story short, he was just like, "Hey, we've got some old people who are doing all the jobs, and we've got a youth population that just doesn't want to work. So we're going to start paying the old people to stop working, so that the younger generation kind of has to go to work,
Hmm.
right? And that age of which they're going to do that was 70, which interestingly enough was around um, the life expectancy at that time. For once you got reached adulthood, it was around 70 or whatnot in Germany.
Hmm.
Um, so it's just like, great, we're going to start paying you, but not for very long because then you're going to get canned.
Right.
But the point being, so it's like 130 years, right, where we've even really had this concept of, okay, you're going to work and then you're going to retire. And I think even just recently, within, let's say, last 20 or 30 years, we've started thinking of retirement as something more than just not working anymore.
Hmm.
I think like my grandmother, my grandfathers, didn't know my great grandparents that much, but just through stories or whatnot, they didn't they didn't retire to then go fish all the time and go play golf and do this and do that and travel the world. No, they just retired, just meant not working anymore.
Hmm.
It meant doing chores around the house and playing card games with the neighbors and whatnot. That's what retirement was. It was just hang out local. So I think
You
if you
know,
take into the idea that this is a fairly new phenomenon to begin with, we're all still just figuring it out.
yeah.
What you and I think of as retirement isn't necessarily what it has to be. So I'm not surprised that Gen Z is then also like, well, what's retirement even like for us?
Right. Well, it's interesting too, I think you may have read the book. We talked about it in the past about the book called Ikigai. And the interesting thing that I got out of that book, one of the first things they talk about is just the fact that in like cultures like Japan, there isn't even like a direct translation to
For
for
retirement.
retirement, right?
Right.
It's not even a
It's just not
thing,
right. Yeah.
which is
And
crazy to
interestingly
me.
enough, I haven't read the book, but I've read a couple articles,
Hmm.
excuse me, about it. And yeah, it's just like, interestingly enough, if you're not really looking to retire, you just keep on, you have a purpose and something that what you get up for every day, right? Those people tend to be healthier and
Hmm.
happier as well.
Right.
Um, so I don't, it could be something where, quite frankly, maybe Gen Z's onto something. It's not, it doesn't have to be portrayed in a negative way. It's like, oh, they're not saving for retirement. It's like, well, they're just thinking about their older years differently. And maybe that's not wrong. Maybe there's room to have more discussion about work in your 50s, 60s, 70s, as opposed
Right.
to just we're going to retire.
Right. Like it's just like not like in the traditional sense. They're
Right.
gonna,
Well,
and
and is
maybe,
it been around long enough to have something that is traditional? I mean, if you've only had 4 or 5 generations, can we call it traditional yet?
right. Well, an interesting thing too is, you know, it seems the further and further we go, just even in the time that I've worked in my professional career, the last 30 years, the time you spend at a particular, um, I don't even want to say a typical employer, but even in a particular field, people are shifting and changing more often,
Mm-hmm.
just doing different things. And so, yeah, maybe that's one of the things that Gen Z is thinking. We need to get someone from Gen Z on this podcast to
Yeah,
talk about it.
that'd probably be pretty cool. I'll see if I can find somebody interested.
Yeah. I know I've
No,
already asked my kids. They're not gonna.
no, okay. I'll ask around. I know some folks. Um, but even thinking about retirement. So you told your kids that you're going to retire, and you have quote unquote retired, right?
Correct.
Dude, I
In
know
the
you're
in the
not
traditional
retired,
term, in the
right?
traditional
But I
term.
mean, you just stopped working for one company, and now you're doing other things,
Correct.
right? And those other things earn you some money.
They do. They do.
I
I
mean,
mean,
it's not a career, I get it, but it
no,
earns you some money. It's something that you get up and you enjoy doing it, right?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah,
do it if I didn't enjoy it. I mean, for me,
right.
it's yeah. I
So,
mean, that was yeah, you're absolutely right. And actually, I was just having another conversation with somebody that also recently left the workforce, again, retired early at 50. She
mhm.
left in May. And we were having this discussion and we talked about the fact that, because I was telling her like, oh, I'm doing this thing, I'm doing that thing, and this, and she reaffirmed, she was like, well, you don't need the money. Like, it's not like, well, I got to do this side hustle or do this gig work or whatever because I have to get food on the table or I got to pay my, heating bill. It's like,
Right.
no, I do it kind of like for the fun of the game kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe a healthier way to do it. I don't know. I've been going back and forth with some of the things, because I've been reading blogs and reading reading a book that's very popular among the fi/fire community, and I'm reading
Hmm.
it. I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, it sounds, some of it sounds good, but some of it also just sounds, I don't know, like just like they're missing the point, just like of life.
Hmm.
It's just like, well, if you really just hate life for 10 years and you just grind it and grind it, grind it, grind it, grind it, then it gives you some freedom. It's just like, or you could have just been doing what you wanted the whole 10 years, which sounds kind
I
of like
think
having some freedom.
I think that's the thing. So I kind of discovered this whole thing like in 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I think in the kind of the early days, even before that, right? We're talking like 2009, 2010. I think absolutely it was kind of like scorched earth. I'm gonna like bust ass and earn as much as I can for 10 years and just be miserable.
Right.
And I think now, the term fire, and some people, maybe that's a new term, but like to reach financial independence and retire early, it's kind of like an acronym. I guess say,
Mm-hmm.
it's, I think the message now, it's definitely evolved. I think the
Sure.
message more is now definitely kind of let's slow that roll and like have more of a balance to it. If you can shave some years off, so you're not, I don't want to all of a sudden, at 62, 65 or whatever, and now I'm, in poor health or my knees don't work, and I know there's
Sure.
all these things.
Well,
So,
that's what I'm saying. It's like, do we even need to shave years off if we're enjoying what we're doing?
oh, absolutely not. When I
Right.
when I started,
Which the whole point, what you're talking about with the icky guy, it's just
yep,
like what gets you going every morning, you know, just keep doing that.
yeah, yeah, there
Save along
was,
the way because at some point, no matter what, you're going to stop working. Something might get you up in the morning, but something's going to come up.
yeah. I mean, when I first kind of, was fast tracking it and I was investing, 50, 60, even 70% of my income to really speed up my retirement.
Yeah.
At the time, I still absolutely loved what I was doing. And I was like, hey, if you like what you're doing, then keep doing it. It was just later on when I started to realize that there was just a bunch of other stuff I want to do. And so it was hard leaving my day job just because I did like what I was doing. And there was still parts of it that I miss. I still miss some of that stuff. But to your point, if you like what you do, so let me ask you this. Because I want your take on it. People say, oh, if
All
you
right.
find something that you love to do, you never work a day in your life, right? Do you believe that?
Not at all. Not at all. Because I love my job,
Mhm.
but there are some days when I don't like my job, and that's part of it. Life's not perfect, but it's those days that you have the struggle and you go in and you persevere through it. That then when you have the days that are awesome, you're like, yes, this is why I do this. Not everything's going to be great all the time. And I think if we have an expectation that it is going to be great all the time, we're just setting ourselves up for failure. And we end up chasing something that doesn't exist
Mhm.
because we'll have a really great job. But because we have those days where it does feel like work because it is work
Mhm.
and it's a little tougher or you're just emotionally mentally drained or whatever it is, you're like, oh well, this must not be the right job for me because if I really loved what I did, then I wouldn't work a day in my life, and so now I have to go find a different job. And you're just constantly chasing something that is a myth instead of just being along for the ride and enjoying the moment and just knowing that some days are better than others and being able to zoom out and see the big picture of, okay, today wasn't great, but how was this week? How was this month? How is the big picture? Maybe the one
Mhm.
detail isn't perfect, but nothing nothing is perfect.
Right.
So it's just kind of creating this imaginary perfect job that just isn't there, and you're going to end up chasing something and missing out on a lot of things along the way because of that.
I always balance this, and I didn't really know, like I was always one to say, oh, follow your dreams, do what you love. But then I was also raised by this, mentality of you got to pay your dues and you got to persevere and you got to like do the hard shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I was always like confused over like, well, and again, like I said, there were times when I absolutely loved what I did. But there was days where you're like, oh,
Yeah. Well, I
not
mean,
this again.
okay. We've we both play musical instruments, right? So
Well, you do.
you play musical instrument.
I try.
Um and I think that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. Just that, like, it's kind of dovetails from the conversation we had last week,
Yeah.
of just like seeing how these things kind of fit together
Hmm.
similarly. And there are times when you're practicing where you're just like, this is hard.
Hmm.
This one lick is hard. Getting the I don't know what you call it, guitar fingerings.
Sure.
It's the slide positions right on the trombone, and the articulations, and it's not quite in tune, and it's really fast, or
Hmm.
whatever it is, or lining it up with another section, or there's just parts of it that are hard.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that doesn't make me not like it and not
Yeah.
want to play, right? It's just, yeah, it's hard. And then some days, gosh, I don't remember who said it. And I'm gonna butcher it, but here goes anyway. Somebody was just like, every day, you pick up the horn. Some days the horn wins, and some days you win, and you just keep going until you die, and then the horn wins. you know,
Right.
but it's
I like
it's
it.
just it's just it is
Right.
hard. It is difficult, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that's worth doing. So when we have work that has stressful days, then that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. You can just come back the next day, and it's maybe tomorrow's a less stressful day,
Right
and
on. I was
um,
gonna say that leads me to the last lesson I had, and my guitar coach is just he's awesome. And it was literally my the coaching sessions are 30 minutes. So we're flying. Like we don't have a lot of time to get through this stuff. But the interesting thing, like we were working on this one piece and this one lick, and it was just the tiniest little thing. And why it actually kind of fits with personal finance and any type of personal development of why sometimes paying a coach, right, can definitely help. Because there was this one piece where it's like I just couldn't get the sound right or I didn't, but it was interesting because he said, well, start with an up pick on this one. And then when I bend this note, bend it down, like working the efficiencies of the fingering
mhm,
based on where I'm coming from and where I'm going. And
yeah,
like just that little bit dramatically changed where I was stuck. You know what I mean? And I never would have got that if I wasn't sitting down with somebody face to face talking through. I mean, I know we're kind of off on a tangent of why Gen Z thinks they're never going to retire, but anyway, it was a great example of like sometimes it's just so worth it to get somebody that knows what the frick they're doing and
yeah,
has the patience to walk through with you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, anyway, it
oh
was
yeah,
super cool.
absolutely.
So back to like, I do want to look at some of the primary reasons why. Like, we talk about there was a couple articles that you and I were talking about, and about why Gen Z feels as though they may never retire, or maybe they're going to look at retirement differently. But do you think it's lower income, or is it that income just hasn't been obviously income hasn't been kind of matching with some of the other costs of things? I mean, it's
Um,
I don't want to use the inflation word because
I don't think that's what it is, and the reason why I don't think that's what it is um, if you look back, picked a random year, 1970. It was long enough ago, right?
okay.
Household income in 1970, median household income was just under $10,000, 9,870. If you put that into any one of the inflation calculators, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Fred, the whatever you want to put it into, it says that today that would be 82,328. However, the median household income now is 104,000. So the median household income is more than it should be adjusted for inflation.
Interesting.
So I think, And I wrote down a whole bunch of other stats, which will make some people just like go cross-eyed and never listen to us again. So I won't go through them. But what I was noticing, writing all of it down and kind of looking at it, is you can paint whatever picture you want to paint. You can make it look really great. You can make it
Mhm.
look really terrible. And what it's really going to come down to is what kind of effort are you going to put into your life every day? And what kind of people are you going to surround yourself with? And what are you going to make of this life? At least where we live in the US, right?
Mhm.
Certainly places out there where life is a whole lot more difficult and challenging. But with the opportunities that we have here and people have in many other, you know, fortunate developed countries, it's the headlines that say it's all doom and gloom. Yep, you can listen to those and your life will be all doom and gloom if you want to do that. But I think if you just also look at the data, there's opportunities there for anybody to be successful. You just got to sometimes make some hard choices and
Right.
decide what's more important to you at the time. And maybe do something that you're not really excited about doing temporarily until you get in a better position. But
So there was
that's
this yeah, no,
yeah,
no, no, no. So there's this survey put out by this organization, this TIA Institute. And I wanted to mention this is kind of one thing that I would like us to, if we can focus on, because it said, you know, why they claim that like 80, almost 80% of these Gen Zers aren't saving for retirement.
mm-hmm.
And of those, 35% of them, they just don't have the knowledge and don't know where to start. So I think that's
Right.
where, you and I, we've kind of talked several times at different podcasts, and I do it on blog posts all the time. It's like, if you know somebody that, I guess have the courage to, I think you've said it best, right? Just lend a hand, like help them out. Like I just didn't ask the question. Like I didn't ask for help and I didn't know what I
Yeah.
was doing. So how do we, I don't know, how do we, we're talking about, we're talking about financial reform here, Dan.
Right. Well, so I mean, some states I think are at least taking a step in the right direction in making financial education courses be part of required high school graduation. Um, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
If I could put my stamp on it, I'd adjust things a little bit, but it would be tough. The short version is I know it would be one more class that people trying to get their degree in teaching have to take, but
Mm-hmm.
I think people going into the teaching profession should have a financial literacy course, and then ideally they would be able to incorporate financial literacy um, tenants, if you will,
Yeah.
into their coursework because it's just simple things that you can hear in any different area that are relevant that then tie together. For instance, we've been talking music already. Any music teacher will tell you it's not about taking your instrument home and practicing for 4 hours one day.
Hmm.
It's about practicing for 15 minutes every day and being consistent about it.
Right.
And then, so then that band director, that choral director, that whoever takes the 30 seconds it is. So it's hey, just like investing, it's not about putting $1 million in when you're 60. It's about putting $100 in every
Right.
month from now until then. And then just leaving these little nuggets here and there. And so they just start hearing it because
Hmm.
I do think, and it's tangent central tonight. I do think
That's right.
that it's a step in the right direction to have one class dedicated to financial education, but at the same time, if it's just one class, that's too much of an opportunity for someone to learn the knowledge and then data dump it at the end of the semester and be like, okay, past that class, now I'm on to something else,
Yep.
unless other things build on it consistently, right?
Sure.
So
Well, and I do find it interesting that of those 20% of Gen Zers that are saving for retirement, it's due to things like auto enrollment into like 401ks and stuff like that. And I think that's awesome. I think there has to be also still some education around that, right? Where you got to know. Well, like
Absolutely,
what is
because
that money going into? What kind of
they're
funds
going
are
to
there?
change employers a couple of times. You're going to not even realize that now they have 7 401ks that they
Yep,
can
exactly.
consolidate and make it a little bit simpler. Right. But it's better than nothing. And I do want to make sure that we call to the point of, because I don't think we did. Um, 80% of Gen Z is at least saving.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, that's a good
they
point.
they are saving money. They're just not saving it saying, okay, this is my retirement fund. So as long as we can then get through to Gen Z, it's like, all right, if you don't want to call it retirement, that's great. But let's make sure that we've got, short, medium, and long-term goals for you. So that way, because your long-term goals, if it's not money that you're using for the next 20, 30 years, let's not have that just sitting in the bank account. Let's get that working for you.
Yeah, in
So
that TS survey, it said that they definitely have a increased preference for liquidity
mhm.
for that fund. So they are saving, but they're saving cash, which
Right, but it can go
it
in a brokerage account. Doesn't have to
yeah,
be a retirement account. Just straight
it's
into a brokerage account. That's
yeah,
liquid.
it's better than nothing, you know?
Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I've mentioned this before that, my son, when he was 18, opened up a Vanguard account and he was like putting anything he could, right? Even if it was like 40 bucks, whatever.
yeah,
I'm like, just keep doing it.
yeah.
Just keep doing it. And you're going to be way further ahead than where I was, not knowing what the F I was doing. There's a couple things here, and you know what? We are going to follow up. We're going to find a Gen Zer that wants to talk about this
All right.
because it'll be great. It'll be great to get their kind of firsthand experience. Actually, a couple, it'd be good getting some different experiences. To talk about, is it because they just have a different view of uh, work-life balance, different view of what career looks like, a different view of what even retirement looks like? Or they just think about it differently? Or do they feel as though the world is stacked against them and there's just no way they can retire because they don't make enough, because everything else is too expensive, whatever it is? I'm really curious to do our own super duper highly scientific research.
No, I think that'd
Awesome.
be great. Yeah, let's find at least one or two. That'd be good.
Cool, man. Well,
So
Dan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for
yeah,
uh,
always.
the good news is my NyQuil and my cough drops have been working. I haven't hacked up a lung and coughed too much right now. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us again. I really appreciate it. And we want to hear from you. So again, you can get all our contact info in the show notes. We'll have links to the articles and the tier report that we talked about today in the show notes. And we would love for you to share this with somebody, a friend, a family, a coworker, an aunt and uncle, a niece and nephew, anybody that you could think of,
Enemies too. Whoever, it doesn't matter.
whoever.
Send it their way.
That's right. And be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. And we will see you next time on the Extreme Personal Finance Show. See ya.